10 Steps Further is a podcast designed to help you get 10 steps further along your spiritual journey. If you've been on your journey for 30 years or 30 minutes, if you believe in God, or even if you're not sure He exists, all we're trying to do is help you get 10 steps further. I'm Jonathan, and this is Jack, and we're just taking a walk. Why don't you join us? Welcome back to 10 Steps Further. We have, third time? Third time. We have Gino Mingo with us today. It's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, for Gino. Okay, I'll give the Gino bio, whatever I can remember. All right. Okay. Gino, pastor of a church in our community.
Yep.
He's now kind of part of Canyon Springs and spoke last Sunday. Did a great job. Just so easy to listen to.
Yep.
Played at Oregon State.
Yep.
So Beavers.
Beavers,
football.
Not Ducks. And he was a linebacker or D lineman.
Yep.
Right.
Either one.
Both hands.
Either one.
Okay.
Try out for the Chiefs.
Went to Chiefs, yep.
Chiefs.
Okay.
Cut by the Chiefs.
Oh, had to do that.
Yeah.
See,
Throw that in.
like if Gino's given the biography, he doesn't say that.
I don't? Well, I say released. It's softer, it's gentler. I was actually the last one.
Oh,
man.
So that hurts even more,
That's
doesn't it?
even worse,
That's
though,
worse,
right? Like
man.
All right,
worse.
so cut, released,
Yep.
rejected, whatever
All
word.
of it. Still getting ministry. Still getting ministry.
And then did you play for the BC Lions?
Yes.
See, look at that, man. I know a lot about you.
Jack's
don't I?
on it.
You didn't have any of the music.
One of his
though.
best. Oh, he's got a couple of discs that he cut.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
and, yep. And
Yeah.
Play-
My
That's
shining
very-
moment was the movie I acted in. No,
Is that right?
I acted in a movie.
No
way.
Tell me about it.
It was a movie called Final Solution. Back
Really?
In 2000. Yeah, it was about a true story about a gentleman named Hedrick Wolfhart who was, Afrikaans and bombing townships, and Jesus saved him, and he came back. They call him the White Elephant. He's the only Afrikaans who could go in a township and they wouldn't kill him. He just go preach the gospel. Yeah, a very cool story.
Wow.
Who were you?
Yeah.
I was a cameraman from San Diego. We were there. I was on the film crew, and so I was in the movie. I was like,
You
filming
got
stuff
both
on-
sides of the camera then? You were.
Yeah, I was both sides. Yeah, so
Okay.
I was playing. I was supposed to be Ernie
You were
Young
playing
first.
a cameraman.
Yeah, I was playing a cameraman.
Okay.
I had no lines.
Okay.
I got there, and my name at first was Ernie Young. After they met me and talked to me, the guy goes, "I think I'm gonna keep your name Gino." I go, "Okay." And
Nice.
then he actually wrote lines in for me.
Okay.
Do you remember any of them?
My line?
Yeah.
Some of them. Like,
Give me one.
Do they all have cuss words? Like there?
No, yeah, all cuss words, and I'm going outside to catch this. No, Gino, don't, because they're fighting, that kind of stuff. And I have the big scene. I have the biggest scene with the guy. Actually, this is where I've acted with people in the Black Panther movie.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
The guy that plays Black Panther's father, John Connie,
Okay.
acted with him in this movie. And if you're watching, and there were the guys who stole the vibranium. They were the Afrikaans, the two guys that were with Michael B. Jordan. When they get to the plane to fly off, and the one guy goes, "Okay, boss." Let's see.
Yeah.
Him. David
No
White.
way.
Right.
Yep, David White.
Yeah, it's so
and then Don
great.
Cheadle's. I grew up with
so
Don Cheadle.
close, and then you got
So
cut.
close.
Don Cheadle and I would walk to school together.
Next time I give your biography, I'm going to say he was almost in the Black Panther movie.
Almost, there you go. That's the one. That's it right there.
Okay,
time.
so today we have a topic. It's really a topic about justice, injustice, when to speak up, when to shut up. Mm-hmm. But it's called Silent Jesus.
Yeah.
And I want to start out like this. I'm sure you know the movie
Just Mercy?
Just Mercy. Yeah, thanks. Mm-hmm. I never saw the movie. Jonathan saw
It was a good movie. Good movie.
Yeah, but I read the book.
Yeah.
And so in the book, really the main, I believe, is this true in the movie, that the main character is Walter McMillan? Is that correct? Mm-hmm. All right. So Walter McMillan was, it's all about Brian Stevenson. Brian Stevenson is a Harvard law grad, and he moved to Alabama to help those people that are on death row who've been wrongfully accused, to stand up for them and to fight for them as a lawyer, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's his whole life. In fact, this story took place in 1986, which is 34 years ago, and I know that because I was married in 87.
Okay.
That's how I mark time. All
Okay.
right. So he's been doing this for a very long time, and one of the guys that he remembers the most and became the story of this book and this movie is Walter McMillan, a black businessman in Alabama, was able to kind of pull himself up, create his own business. So he's very, very renowned, and back then a strong black businessman would get noticed in every regard, right? The black businessman, the black in the community would probably look up to him. The white in the community would probably look for reasons to, degrade him. I'm just saying. In Alabama, I don't know, but so what? Essentially, he's a good businessman, not necessarily a great guy, and he started to get involved with this woman who's not his wife, Karen Kelly. And what everyone noticed was not that he was having an affair, but that he was having an affair with a white woman. So that got the name out. All right. So there's another guy, Ralph Myers, who got accused of murder. And so when they accused him of murder, he was looking for somebody to pin it on. And the one guy whose name he knew, who had been out in the community, he dropped Walter McMillan. Now, there's a couple reasons. When Rhonda Morrison was killed, the actual time in which she was killed, these things were going for Walter McMillan, all right? When she was murdered, Walter McMillan was at a church fish fry, and there were dozens of witnesses, including a police officer. Walter McMillan did not... it says that the story was that Ralph Myers and Walter were driving in Walter's lowrider truck when Walter went into the Monroe Cleaners, killed Rhonda Morrison, and they both fled in the truck, all right? Walter McMillan did not convert his truck into a lowrider until 4 months after the murder of Rhonda Morrison, and he had the receipts to prove it. And Walter and Ralph had never met. When placed in the same room as Walter, police had to point out who he was to Ralph Myers.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And yet, Walter McMillan, as a black man in Alabama, they needed to pin the murder on somebody. They pinned it on him. Okay? This is the first conversation that Brian remembers with Walter. Walter says this, Mr. Brian, I know it may not matter to you, but it's important to me that you know that I'm innocent and didn't do what they said they did. No kind of way. He says, sure, of course, I understand. When I review the record, I'll have a better sense of what evidence they have. We can talk about it. Walter continued, but look, I'm sure I'm not the first person on death row to tell you that they're innocent, but I really need you to believe me. My life has been ruined. This lie they put on me is more than I can bear if I don't get help from someone who believes in me. His lips began to quiver to stop himself from crying. And he says, I know you'll do everything you can to help me. Now, it's an amazing story, and I don't want to blow the ending of the movie or the book. But essentially, once that happens to you, you're never the same.
Mm-hmm.
And from that moment, Walter couldn't help but tell everybody about what had happened to him in his life, right? You can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
If you faced that kind of injustice.
Right.
All right. I don't know. Do you guys have any thoughts? I mean, based on the movie that you saw, is anything that you want to add to that?
It's been a while. What do you got, Gino?
I just, again, it's kind of going back to that quote you said earlier while we were talking. I think about Ralph, is his name?
Yeah.
And just how we're so willing to selfishly cover ourselves at the expense of others, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
That sin will cause us to wallow in injustice for selfish reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what just rings for me. I mean, for you to be able to have the cops just point the guy out to you, and you go along, you just...
Right. Well, and the amount of people that had to go along with it.
The amount
right?
of people, exactly.
Like, it's not... And there's something about kind of herd mentality in that, too, because it's like, if everybody is just out to pin a murder on a person who's not guilty of it. The amount of people who had to know this doesn't add up. But when everybody else is saying like that, the broken part of the justice system is the fact that people are doing it. Like it's
Right.
like
Right.
people are
Yeah.
manipulated. You can manipulate people. And if everybody's going one direction, it's much, much harder to go the opposite.
Exactly.
Right.
And right or wrong wasn't anywhere in their purview. It was nowhere. It was just whatever was selfishly in their hearts.
Right.
That's what they wanted.
Right. So, for whatever reason, I can't stand injustice. It drives me crazy. It's one of my pet peeves.
Yeah.
Jonathan and I were watching a basketball game last night. And the only time I'm yelling is, that's not a foul. Come on, man. Right?
Right.
Just any kind of moment like this.
Oh,
So
I had those moments.
that courtroom scene with Walter is ridiculous, trumped up. As I'm reading this, I just cannot believe what I'm reading.
Mm-hmm.
And I would want to scream as loud as I possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's go back. When Jesus was accused, and Jesus spent basically the 3 years of his public ministry accused,
Mm-hmm.
over and over, time and time again.
Right.
He healed a man with a withered hand.
Mm-hmm.
What was wrong with that?
Did it on the Sabbath, right?
Did it on the wrong day.
Wrong day of the week, man.
You're the wrong
Come
day
on.
guy.
Come on, man. We got 6 days to heal withered hands.
You couldn't do the other 6 days,
Did it on
man.
the wrong day.
You had to be like Chick-fil-A.
right.
You had to be like Chick-fil-A.
There's another time that Jesus was accused of not washing his hands.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no COVID back then.
No.
So
That's because they washed their hands.
Ceremonial washing.
over and over and over, Jesus did the right thing, got accused of, he healed
Right.
somebody, he said, your sins are forgiven. They didn't like that. And so from that point on, I'm not sure which one of these points. I think it might have been the man with the withered hand who these people had seen every day around the temple. Couldn't work because of his withered hand.
Mm-hmm.
He was healed on the wrong day. That was the day they started to plot to kill him.
Yeah.
So they finally pulled it off, right? At the end, Judas gives him up. They bring Jesus in. Here's the court case for Jesus, right? This is what happens, all right? High priest stood up and said to Jesus, are you not going to answer? Jesus remained silent. When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. They bring him to Herod. Herod saw Jesus, and he was greatly pleased because for a long time he wanted to see him. I don't think Jesus felt the same way, right? Hey, Jesus, man, I always wanted to meet you. That's great. What's going on? Oh, they're trying to kill me.
Yeah.
From what he had heard about him, he hoped to see him perform a sign of some sort. He plied him with many questions, but Jesus gave him no answer. There's a couple moments when Jesus spoke. Like they said, you're the Son of God. He'd say, it is as you say, or you have said so. That's the difference between Walter and Jesus.
Yes.
Walter, I'm Walter for no question about it. If something happened to me unjustly, I would tell everyone. I would post it everywhere. I'd try to get TV cameras on me. Jesus said nothing. He was completely silent.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to have this conversation about justice and injustice and when we should speak up and when we should not speak up.
Mm-hmm.
But I just have to tell you, man, if something is unjust, I just let me give you my favorite example. So we bring this daughter over from Haiti. It took us 4 years to adopt her. We finally bring her here. And there's a couple things you have to do, a couple hoops you have to jump through. The moment she stepped foot on American soil, she was an American citizen. But we had to take her to the consulate, and she had to swear an oath to the United States. And it's a good thing that her English wasn't that great, because the kinds of things that they make you swear to, and being willing to pick up a gun for your country and all that
gosh.
stuff. Yeah, I don't
Really?
think she.
Wow.
At that point, she wasn't ready to. I don't think she's ready to do that. But she put up her hand. She repeated
and we
everything.
never had to do that.
Yeah, I know, right?
Right, like it's like they don't do that in like
At
first grade,
third
like
grade.
Yeah.
Are you ready to swear to? Can I sleep on it?
Yeah, because like how old was she at this moment?
She's 14.
14.
Yeah, it's
Good
like
14,
Lord.
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
I'll fight for
absolutely.
this
I'm
guy.
in.
That's crazy.
So there's that. So up and downstairs from the consulate downstairs is Social Security office. So we need to get her a Social Security card.
Right.
So the first one felt a lot harder. And then we go downstairs to get her a Social Security card. And we have her paperwork. She's a citizen. They go, nope, you can't get a Social Security card. Why? You have to provide proof that she lived in Haiti. Okay.
Right.
So we went and we collected some stuff. We actually went to another Social Security office hoping that they would figure it out. And they said, no, what you have to do is you have to have paperwork from every single year, original paperwork from every single year of her life, all 14 years. No copies, original paperwork. And I said to the guy, oh, wait, are you kidding me? We're talking about Haiti. Like what am I just going to call up and say, hey, Haiti, can you just please provide paperwork? I mean, where am I even going to get this?
Right.
So we tried. We called her school. They sent us everything they had. We called her mom. Mom sent everything we had. The next time we went in, the lady looked at the paperwork, and as we had the stack of maybe 12, 15 pieces of paper, she threw out like 13 of them.
Okay.
Not original. No, this won't work. Not original. No, this won't work. And we had to have one from every single year of her life. Now, if she was a German citizen coming to the United States and wanted a Social Security card, she would have walked out with one that day. But because she was a citizen, let me tell you something, man. I told everybody I could possibly talk to about this injustice, right?
Right.
And finally, we got somebody who just said, yeah, this is unreasonable. I'm going to talk to my boss. And they gave us a Social Security card.
Yeah.
But those kinds of things, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything like that just, you said earlier, Gino, that injustice is one of your things.
Yeah. You do those gift tests, and justice is just one of my gifts. And I can remember just being in elementary, junior high, and, they would make the jokes about the little short yellow bus, the little short bus. And I would get so angry to watch my friends tease these kids. And I just, maybe it was just Jesus. I don't know why I would feel that way. I'm just like, what if that were you? Mm-hmm. You would be looking for mercy and help from so many people if that were you and it was being done to you. But yet you have you're so short-sighted and blinded that you have this privileged feeling that you can treat someone that way and have no consequences. And I would find myself just getting on my friend, man, stop that. What are you doing? Cut it out. Just quit it. You know what I mean? I'd walk with those kids, and I wasn't trying to think like, oh, I'm getting a merit for that. It was just something inside where justice for me is just, and I've grown up in a way that I think through my walk with Jesus, man, you could call me the N-word. You could even put your hands on me and not get necessarily a violent response back initially. Maybe you put your hands on me a second or third time, you might. But touch a family member, a friend, or something. I remember as a kid, my buddies were about to fight. And I looked at these guys. What was inside me was so intense. I looked at the guys that were about to fight, my friends, and I said, look, this is not a good idea. And they looked at me, and I go, let's not do this. I go, because if by chance you start to get the best of my friend, I'm not going to be able to stay out of it. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't even really about justice. That was just me recognizing what's inside of me to see something wrong or someone to be hurt or done wrong. I just don't do well with that. It's just, and I think that is, in a redeemed sense, part of Jesus. I just do. He didn't like seeing what was done wrong to his creation, and he did something about it.
Right.
And that was part of the reason of his silence.
Yeah. Can you think of times when Jesus stood up for somebody on the outside?
Well, all the time. I mean, that he would interject himself. I mean, that was one of the reasons why they didn't like him, right? Like
Exactly.
You think of. I mean, he had a conversation with a Samaritan woman who was already hated by the Jews, and he's like, I'm gonna go seek her out. I'm gonna have a conversation with her. Then I'm gonna stay in town with her and her friends and do ministry for a couple days. All of that was taboo in the culture. It was like, you're not supposed to do that. I think of the woman caught in adultery. Same thing. It's like everybody else is coming to kill her, and Jesus is like, go ahead. If you don't have sin, you go ahead and do it. Like he just and then they all just leave. He wrote something down. I don't know what he wrote down, but it was enough to be like, I don't want to have anything to do with this guy. And then he asked her where her accusers are.
Their Netflix account.
Right.
He knows what I watch.
I have the password, guys.
I think it was like, I see Joe has a rock in his hand. He was with her the night before.
Yeah.
It was like, whoa.
Yeah. But I mean, just his willingness. I mean, it was constant. He would go and find the outsider, the outcast, and
Zacchaeus.
I was about to say, how about
Zacchaeus?
Yeah.
Tax gatherer. I'm gonna have lunch with you
And
today.
everybody could feel justified in their own hearts being mad at Zacchaeus.
Right.
Think about how confusing that was. How are you letting this guy off the hook after he's stolen from us? It's a whole nother level.
Well, and I love like if you just look at his disciples.
Oh.
Like you just look at the guys that he chose. Like, okay, these are the guys I'm going to walk around with, and they're going to be known as my guys. Okay, I need a radical zealot who wants to take out the Romans. And I need a tax collector who works for the Romans.
Right.
Like he basically brings in all of these groups that can't be brought together, and he just walks with them. And everywhere he goes, they're with them. And it's just amazing to. And they weren't the educated. Really, I actually heard a pastor one time say, he said, if there was one upstanding person that you probably would have accepted in your group in that day, it was Judas.
Right.
Like he was the guy that kind of everybody else is like, here's a good guy. At least he's got one good guy in the group.
Right.
It turns out he's the worst of them all.
So why everybody else? Why not himself? I mean, it's kind of, for us, injustice probably hits us most when it's unjust to us.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, because
maybe.
here's our go-to move, right? Can I talk to your supervisor? Let me speak to somebody in customer service. If I don't get what I want, I'm giving you a bad Yelp review. I'm going to come down and talk to the teacher. I want to hear what the principal has to say about this. You know, it can be as easy as I want to talk to the manager, and as simple as, hey, buddy, that's my lane.
Right.
You know?
I do think that there is a level higher than ourselves. Even for most of us, our kids, like even like dealing with the teacher, dealing with the coach, dealing with the kid on the other team who's playing too rough. Like I'd get in a game and I get scrappy with the guy I'm playing against, but like I don't want to see somebody playing against my daughter and like bullying her in that game, right?
Yeah.
So I do think that's
the next level.
Like Gino said, like I might be able to hold myself back if you're coming after me. I might be able to walk away and think through, like I might lose this fight, but I might not care as much if it's somebody that I care about that's taking the hits.
Right.
So, yeah.
Oh my gosh, my son was in the championship, world water polo CIF championship, and they were down, and this ref was calling a call that it wasn't a call, and that hadn't been called all year on him. Oh my gosh, I swear the guy who was from my church sitting next to me, I think he was looking for a new pastor.
I
Google's churches
just
right there on his phone.
I just recently had those feelings. You know, I took my daughter to an ID camp in Arizona. We're about 30 minutes before it's done.
Yeah.
And this girl passes the ball, and I'm like, ooh, she's about to get this shot off. And another girl runs up behind her, doesn't play the ball, slams her in the back. In a game, you get a yellow card or something. I mean, it was just nasty.
Okay.
And Noelle rolls
call.
her ankle so bad that we need to get x-rays because they're thinking it could have some broken bone. And I'm literally sitting there. I am steaming.
Yeah.
You did it and I'm going, and I'm thinking to myself, gosh, she doesn't know, but she should be so thankful that I know Jesus. I love Jesus. Because, you know, I wanted to say something. And I got to remind myself, this is a 15, 16-year-old girl, Gino. It's a game. But it was injustice to me. I'm like, you just hurt her. You didn't have to do that. That was uncalled for. What do you? And I'm having this conversation with you. I'm like, okay, all right. I got to be like you. I got to get me out of the way. I got to reduce me,
Right.
and that is so hard to do.
Yeah. So there are times when we should just shut up.
Right.
Yeah.
But there are 100% times when we should stand up against injustice.
Yeah.
This was the quote that I started us out with. It's just from a book I happened to be reading this morning called Gentle and Lowly by Dane Ortland. And he says this: fallen emotions not only sinfully overreact, they also sinfully underreact.
Right.
Right? Because we
that.
think if we're sinful, we got to get angry or we're going
Love that.
to get out of control. But sometimes it's our job to stand up against injustice. So I'm trying to figure out how we do that and what it is that we can learn from silent Jesus. And because I came prepared, I have 4 points. So maybe we'll just use those as our stepping off point. Okay? So the first thing we can learn from Jesus is Jesus had no need to prove himself.
Right.
Right? He's at the end of his life, and they're accusing him, but he's not standing up for himself.
And it's crazy to think, too, right? Like, when you say end of your life, it's like, oh, so he was 90. No, he was 33.
No, he's 33.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, right.
I mean,
right.
it's like, this is a guy who's in the prime of his life.
And let me just say, I miss 33.
Yeah.
At 58, that's 25 years.
Yeah.
33 was awesome.
Yeah.
When I was 33, and I remember I worked at a Starbucks, actually, and I remember my birthday of 33, and somebody said, "How old are you?" And I said, "I'm as old as Jesus." And I was just so excited to have hit that number. I'm as old as Jesus.
Wow. You know, that prove yourself thing. So it's 1997, and this is not even necessarily an injustice like we think, like being done so wrong, but it gets to your point of us feeling the need to prove ourselves, to justify ourselves. We're in a conference, and the leader of the conference, I'm in the worship team at this time. He's sharing with everybody. We're about to close the conference out. He's calling the worship team up. So I duck down because I kind of hesitate because I didn't want to walk in. And he motions again, like, come on up. And so I did. I went on up. We sang. So afterwards, Greg comes up to me. He's like, hey, I heard what you said after this. And when I called you up and you were like, I'm coming. And I was like, oh, no, Greg, I didn't respond that way. Because I wouldn't respond to you that way anyway. You're talking to everybody. That'd be embarrassing. And he goes, no, you didn't. I go, no, Greg, I didn't. And he goes, no, I heard you. I go, okay, well, Greg, if I did that, wasn't my heart. He goes, well, it's not about your heart. So he's part of me. And at this moment, I'm like, I didn't say. So I start going around the room. Hey, so-and-so, did you hear me say anything? They're like, no, you didn't. And then I go to my guy, Kevin, who's sitting right next to me, my roommate. I go, Kevin, when Greg called me up, did you hear me say anything? And Kevin goes, no, you didn't say. And I went to go to a third person, right? And I mean, I know this is the Holy Spirit. He said, stop.
Yeah.
And he goes, don't. He goes, be willing to be wronged. And at that moment, I had to sit there and go, man, this is a teaching moment. And look inside and go, man, am I willing? And I'm a black man, if you hadn't noticed. I could give you a laundry list of where I've been done wrong and injustice-wise in many areas of my life. So I just want to say, even as a black, I mean, to tell me not to fight for my right when you feel like you've been done wrong so long and so often, you need Jesus to really get that calibration in your thinking, because it's like, wait a second, I'm tired of being run roughshod over and done wrong. So for me, when that happened, it started me on a journey, and I was like 32 when that happened.
Yeah.
Of going, Gino, stop fighting for your right to be right. Be willing to be wrong. And I could feel then it was him saying, this is something you're going to have to learn throughout your ministry and your life.
Yeah. Let me read you a quote, okay? This is from the book Everybody's Normal Till You Get to Know Them by John Ortberg. It says, there are many situations in which I find myself being much more measuring or calculating than I wish I were. Situations where I work hard and subtly as I try to manage what the other person is thinking of me. Situations in which I emphasize opinions I think they might agree with, or tell stories that make me sound smarter or stronger or more successful than I am. And then he says this, I wear too much makeup. Right? We're trying to prove ourselves. And I have this. So my son, Brian Stevenson, went to Harvard. Do you know who else went to Harvard? My son, Harvard Law. And I kind of made up my mind when he made it that I wasn't going to wear it on my sleeve. Now I wear the sweatshirt everywhere.
Right.
Absolutely.
But back then I kind of made up my mind because I didn't want to be that guy. But I'll be honest with you. I could tell you about my son in such a way that you would have to ask me where he goes.
There you go.
Right? Oh, my son's at law school. What law school? Well, thank you for asking.
Yeah.
And if they didn't do it, he goes to law school in Boston.
Yeah.
Really?
Because that's who we are. We want to tell the story that makes other people think better of us. We want to drop the name of the person that we know. We want to tell the great things. When somebody's telling our biography, we want to tell them about the movie we were into. That's just who we are. Jesus was never that.
Yeah.
No.
Right?
No.
Yeah. Well, Jesus isn't like one of the things about Jesus is he's, I think, always forward moving. Like he's not reactive. And that's one of the things. The rest of us are reactive.
Yeah, he responds.
You know, and he just, but he's everything's intentional.
Mm-hmm.
Even to the point where he's like, all right, tomorrow I get arrested, and then I'm gonna get killed, and then I'm gonna rise. Like he had the whole thing planned out, and it was like, here's the game plan, and it was like, if you took out the spiritual element, it looks like Jesus is being, kind of overpowered in this time, but he's not being overpowered. He's like, no, you are actually going according to my schedule. And so he's not ever reactive.
Well, the way he did, it was empowering. I mean, I would tell my kids and people all the time, look, instinctually you react.
Right.
To respond takes the intentionality that
Right.
you're talking about.
Right.
And he never reacted. He was responding. I'm listening to what my dad's telling me to do and what the Holy Spirit's speaking, and he's responding.
Well, we don't realize too. I remember I was in this discussion. We had a small group that I was part of at one time, and this came up because I had seen it. There was a couple brothers that were in this group, and every once in a while they would get in these debates, and I remember saying, I said, this is an amazing thing, right? Check this out. Like you guys could be in a disagreement with each other. And this has happened where you start realizing you're actually arguing the same point. You're actually arguing from the same side of the argument. But then you're like, okay, now we agree, everything's good. No. Now you try to convince the other one that they weren't previously arguing that point. Because the goal was like, the goal isn't to arrive at peace. The goal is to win. And that's most often that's it. Like when there's injustice or when there's like, I want people to notice all of my achievements or whatever it is. It's like where you're talking about the pastor who misreads the tone or whatever it was in the moment. It's like, what's the goal there? Is the goal like in his mind? It might be like, all right, I told him, I put him in his place,
I corrected him,
and it's over.
Yeah.
But your goal was like, no, I need everybody to know that I was right.
Yeah, that I was unjustly accused of something I didn't do. That's where it was.
And there's something to that, but at the same time, it's just like, does that ever, like, no matter if I get the entire room to agree, if he doesn't agree, I still didn't get there.
Yeah.
Right.
So
right. I mean, that's kind of very true of every relationship that we're in.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Are you trying to get everybody to agree that you were right, or are you trying to restore the relationship?
Right.
And that's different. I remember there was a month in my life when I thought, you know what, I'm kind of tired of getting pushed around in my marriage. I'm just going to stand up for myself. The longest month of my life. And it doesn't work.
Yeah.
I remember one single time in my marriage of 33 years where she said, yeah, you know what, I was wrong. You know, you were 100% right. And it's not the goal. The goal is to restore.
It is, and I think for me, the way I felt like God ministered to me in this was, the goal's not to be right. The goal's to be like Him, which is higher than even being right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because you can be right and still be in the wrong spirit.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me give you a second point. Okay, Jesus had no need for the last word. Mm-hmm. All right, so I've read a bunch of John Ortberg, which basically, if you ever read John Ortberg, he's just ripping off Dallas Willard. Okay? But if you ever read Dallas Willard, you realize somebody needs to rip him off because I can't understand it. So it's a great symbiotic relationship between Dallas Willard. And so in one of John's books, I've read them all, he tells this story. He's considered one of the greatest thinkers of our day in Christian literature. And in one of his classes, a student challenged him with statements that were both offensive and incorrect. And he paused and he told the class, "Hey, this is a good place to end the discussion." And somebody asked Dallas afterwards why he hadn't countered the student's argument and put him in his place. And he made this quote: "I'm practicing the discipline of not having to have the last word."
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah, it makes for shorter conversations, probably.
Well,
Right.
you can imagine me with a house full of 7 women. I have to practice that all the time. And I'm trying to get my kids to practice it because they all have to have the last word with each other, and it drives me bonkers.
What's the purpose of having the last word?
I just don't like any last words. So for me, I always have the last word because people just get tired of talking before I do.
Yeah.
I love exploring ideas and thoughts. So it's not like to me, I don't feel like I win if I make a point and there's no response.
Right.
Like I don't feel like that doesn't feel like, okay, we didn't get to where we were trying to get to.
Yeah, this is why for 3 years, for every podcast we go a direction, Jonathan tries to derail it.
Yeah.
This is at the center of that. Okay, I'm going to make a third point, which is maybe where we want to spend a good amount of time is
Right.
Jesus knew when a battle was worth fighting.
Mm-hmm. There you go.
Right, like so he could have come up with the right words and a brilliant cross
Yep.
and angels to come down and prove that he knew that there was no proving to these guys. There was no amount of words that was going to make any difference to these people. It sort of feels similar to me like trying to win an argument on Facebook. Mm-hmm. Like, what's the point?
Right.
You're not going to get half the people like it, half the people that don't. You're going to get people to fight. You have to figure out what is worth fighting for.
Right.
So what is worth fighting for?
Well, I think sometimes though, the person that we're fighting against, when it comes to a lot of justice issues, that person may not like if the goal is to change their minds, then your tactic needs to change because you're usually not going to argue somebody into a different viewpoint.
Right.
But sometimes, and Jesus would do this with the Pharisees, when he would engage the Pharisees, it was a teaching moment for everybody else. It wasn't about the Pharisees.
Right.
The Pharisees were just like, okay, let's make these guys look like idiots for a while. And and I'm sure Jesus had a much softer heart than that, but that's what was happening was he's like, these guys are going to say some stupid things. It's going to be recorded in the scriptures for all eternity. And everybody else for thousands of years is going to learn the right and the wrong. But typically, the Pharisee didn't change their mind. Never changed their mind. And that's like, so sometimes the purpose for speaking up is not I mean, take race as an example. The purpose for going against the racist is not to change the mind of the racist, but it's to tell everybody else it's not okay to be a racist.
Be a racist, right. Yeah, well, no doubt. I mean, I did a ton of apologetics with so much campus ministry early on. And I said, look, I'm not here to talk you out of something because he can come behind me and talk you back in. And I said, but when you leave my presence, you're not going to be able to be sitting on the fence saying, I don't know.
Right.
And in that, the thing that I found, I would tell the students that I was discipling, look, don't pay attention to what I'm arguing with. Go pick the low-hanging fruit, those who are just quiet listening. Those are the ones that are there for a different reason. I find that the arguing, like I would tell them all the time, if people want to talk to me about a unicorn, we're not going to argue about a unicorn. If you believe there's unicorns, go right ahead. I feel only the thing that's worth arguing about to me is the value of people in Jesus' eyes. And can you realize that your identity, when you realize see, that's why Jesus didn't argue. His identity in Christ was in God, his Father was so secure. He didn't have to prove himself. He didn't have to fight for things that were useless. He knew he wasn't going to change the Pharisees. And that's what I'm practicing with. I was like, wait, where am I finding my identity? If it's in him, I don't have to fight so hard on that race issue. I just need to reach, like you said. I'm not going to change that guy's mind.
Right.
But I'll be able to point and go, don't be like him.
Yeah.
Be like him.
I feel like the center for me with this, as far as injustice goes, when I'm at the best place, is when I'm fighting for the right of other
Others,
people
yes.
who are being treated unjustly, not when I am trying to stand up and fight for my own rights with the cable company or, the waitress or the place that didn't serve me the best food.
Well,
But-
I love that example you used. I think it was in a message, but it was with when you had the issue at the bank ATM.
Right.
And then you go off the phone and you go, man, I was a jerk. And it's like you realized at that point, I was fighting for my right and what I felt was important. I treated this person
Right.
wrongly because of
Right.
it. I thought,
Right.
man, can we all arrive at that moment?
Yeah,
where-
yeah. I'd put in about $2,500 in a bank ATM, and it shut down for 15 minutes. And then I called. I don't want to tell you the bank. I'll just give you the initials BA. And nobody answered, and I couldn't get a human being. I finally got somebody. They told me it had been shut down for the weekend. Whatever. I mean, I was. It was
Yeah.
unjust,
Yeah.
but it didn't help for me to yell at that nice
Right.
lady at the lost credit card counter. She didn't have anything to
Right.
do with it.
Right.
Right.
But you're right. So fighting for me, I kind of end up in those ugly spots. But fighting for other people and fighting for their rights.
But even that too, like we are so imperfect in our ability to see the depth of people, because like we can look at the child who's oppressed or who is mistreated, and then they grow up to be a terrible person, and we'll judge that terrible person.
Oh, yeah. That's who
But
we
we'll
are.
defend that child.
Yeah.
And so like in some sense, it's like there's always, I think there's something to just trying to get around our head around the fact that there's always more to the story. Because I tell you what, man, like if my son is being mistreated on the basketball court by the ref, that ref is a terrible person, probably needs to do time. Like he probably somebody needs to lock this guy down. And the reality is like, this is just some 25-year-old kid trying to
Right.
make 20
Right.
bucks an hour, like reffing a
Exactly.
basketball game. But I hate him, and that like that translates into so many things of like the person at the counter or the software engineer who
Okay, so let me tell you, I got a buddy at the church, Corey Peters. I'm going to throw his name out there.
Yeah.
He intentionally did this to himself.
Okay.
He decided that he was going to be a referee. And one of the places that he refereed was a lawyers basketball league.
It's almost as bad as church softball, right?
There were
That was what I said,
Oh, gosh.
Okay, I'm going to give you what we got to talk about this.
Okay.
All right. The unjust treatment of Jesus bought our justice.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of where Jesus' victory was. Is he saw past even life, he saw past death, and he embraced it. And you can't lose in that place, right? I mean, you just like where it looked like he was defeated if he was going to be crucified was actually his greatest victory. And so I feel like for the Christian, our voice, I mean, like if you think of a more modern example, you think of Martin Luther King Jr., like you look at this guy as his voice amplifies with his death. And the Christian, the Apostle Paul was executed for his faith. I think the Apostle John was the only one who wasn't.
Yeah. There's
But
something about him being boiled in oil, but I don't know if that was.
It's not
at
in
least the
scripture, but it's
rumor.
history.
that's,
Yeah.
that's what they say on Patmos. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but I just feel like for the Christian to be living beyond, because it's like the reality is all the injustice that's done against me, God sees it. And if I take it for his name, there's promise of reward. Jesus lived in that.
Yeah.
And when I live in that, I can take injustice and say, I don't need the court to agree with me because I know he agrees with me. And I'm like, and he tells me there's a reward on the other side for those who endure for the sake of his name.
Yeah.
In your question, what really strikes me about what Jesus did and how he responded was this. sometimes we misconstrue what justice is, and people think it's revenge. We
Right.
want revenge, and it's not. One of my favorite movies is Tombstone, and there's this.
Were you in that one?
I was, man, I was. And I love this. They're talking to Doc Holliday
Yeah.
about Wyatt Earp, and two guys are going, man, why is Wyatt doing this, Doc? And he's just trying to get this revenge. And Doc Holliday goes, oh, make no mistake about it. It's not about revenge. It's about the reckoning. And when he says that, it just struck me. And I think about this, and this is why Jesus kept his mouth shut. This is why Jesus took on and did what he did, because he was settling accounts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what justice is about, is settling and balancing the ledger and settling the accounts. We don't look at it that way. We want revenge. We want that pound of flesh and that other pound of flesh.
Right.
But Jesus did that to settle the account for us.
Yeah.
And if he had did it any other way, then he wouldn't have been able to settle that account. And that's why it's so powerful to me.
So I do remember this, Gino, when I did ask Gino to be part of our church for this season, whatever, Gino's response was, I'll be your huckleberry. So
funny.
I do believe that the reason why Jesus bought our justice, but not just for the unjust treatment that we have gotten.
Right.
It's the unjust treatment that we have treated
Thank you.
everybody else with.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's why he died. The injustice of yelling at a small child that can't defend himself.
I was just
The
thinking that.
injustice of talking behind somebody's back that can't tell their side of the story. The injustice of subjecting the people in our lives to our dysfunction. The injustice of infidelity or alcohol or rage or pride. It's not just because we've been unjustly treated. It's because we've done it over and over and over. And the reason why he came is so that we could be freed from that sin.
Yeah.
And he's the only one who sees the whole story, whether it's our story or somebody else's story. And he died so that that could be taken off of our ledger.
He did.
And that's the reckoning.
It is. I've done a lot of settling accounts with my kids, repenting to them, because it's so easy to have the I'm the parent mentality. They're the child.
Right.
You don't know as much. You know what I mean? You need to, and there's so many, and y'all justify it. Well, there's 5 of you. Like that makes it okay that I responded that way. And then I come back and I settle the accounts. I make, Daddy's sorry. I repent, sweetheart.
Yeah.
I shouldn't have did that to you. You didn't deserve that. That level of voice raising or that anger that came out of me, which didn't accomplish the righteousness of God, right? The anger of man doesn't accomplish the righteousness of God. I have to settle it. And when we take that disposition to be like him and settle accounts, then I think we make a lot more noise for him.
Yeah. All right, guys.
So good.
That's good. Well,
Go and be silent or not. I don't know. All right. See you next time.
Jonathan got the last word.
Thanks for joining us for these last 10 steps. If you'd like to join us for another journey, or if you know someone else who's on this walk, subscribe to our podcast at 10 Steps Further on iTunes, or simply search 10 Steps Further on your podcast app. And if you'd like to be part of the conversation with a question or a comment or a criticism or even a wisecrack, look us up on Facebook. We've created a Facebook group where you can be part of the conversation. We'll see you next time.